On my birthday, my rich grandma smiled and asked, "How do you spend your $4 million trust fund?" I blinked in shock. What trust fund? I turned 27 last October. And it was supposed to be a quiet birthday. Pancakes at home with my boyfriend Ethan, a few calls from friends, nothing fancy. Then my mom texted, out of the blue. "Dinner at Grandma's tonight. Dress nice. She's excited to see you." That surprised me. Grandma Ruth rarely asked for family dinners. She was more the type to have her assistant schedule a holiday brunch with the family once or twice a year. But I went. Because no matter how complicated things got, Grandma was still the heart of the Carters, the kind of woman who could silence a room with one glance. I wore a modest green dress, the same one I'd worn to an office dinner last spring. Ethan offered to come with me, but I said no. Grandma didn't like outsiders at family occasions. I drove the hour to her house, replaying old memories. Summers spent picking apples in her garden, the smell of her perfume when she hugged me as a child. Back then, she was warmth. But somewhere along the years, the warmth turned to distance. And I never really knew why. Grandma's house looked exactly as I remembered. White marble, golden chandeliers, the kind of place that made you check your shoes before stepping on the rug. My parents were already there. Mom gave me a kiss on the cheek. Dad smiled stiffly. My sister, Harper, was scrolling on her phone. Dinner was polite. Small talk, fake laughter, talk about promotions and family friends. I noticed Grandma watching everyone carefully, like she was waiting for something. Then, as dessert came out, a 3-tier cake with "Happy Birthday, Lena" written in gold, Grandma lifted her glass of champagne and said, "Well, I have to say, Lena, you've done a wonderful job managing your money. Not everyone your age handles their trust fund so responsibly." The table went quiet. Even the sound of forks stopped. I blinked. "My what?" She smiled. "Your trust fund, dear. The $4 million I set up for you when you turned 21. I thought by now you'd have made some investments." I laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. "Grandma, I don't have a trust fund." She tilted her head. "Don't be modest. I sent the paperwork to your parents 6 years ago. They were supposed to manage it until you turned 25. I looked at Mom. Her face turned pale. Dad set his glass down, hard enough to make a sound. "Mom," Dad said, "maybe this isn't the time." "Not the time," Grandma interrupted. "My granddaughter doesn't even know about her own inheritance. What did you two do?" Harper looked from one face to another, suddenly uncomfortable. "Wait. Lena had a trust fund? You guys didn't tell her." I could feel my pulse in my ears. "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" Dad reached for my hand. "Sweetheart, calm down. It's not what it sounds like." "Then what is it?" I demanded. Mom sighed. "We didn't tell you because we didn't want it to change you. You were young. Money can ruin people." "Ruin people?" I said, my voice rising. "You mean me?" Grandma's eyes narrowed. "Don't tell me you used that money." Mom stammered. We borrowed from it. Just for the family. For the house, for Harper's tuition, and your father's business." "Borrowed?" Grandma snapped. "You drained it." I stared at them, numb. $4 million. You stole $4 million from me. No one said a word. Even Harper was silent. That was the moment something inside me cracked. The birthday candles flickered beside me, and all I could think was, this is my family. I left that night without finishing dessert. Ethan called me, but I couldn't talk. I just drove, aimlessly, headlights cutting through the dark, until I ended up at a gas station parking lot, sobbing so hard my hands shook. $4 million. Do you know how many years I worked 2 jobs? How many times I turned down trips, dinners, dreams, because we can't afford it? And all this time, my parents were using my money to live comfortably. That night, I stopped being their daughter. I became their target. The next morning, I called Grandma. She didn't answer. Later that afternoon, her lawyer did. That's how I found out she had already started digging. Within a week, her attorney confirmed everything. The trust fund existed. It had been fully transferred to my parents' control, then slowly siphoned over the years into family expenses. They bought a lake house, Harper's private college tuition, new cars, vacations. Every check they'd written, every transfer, came from my fund. My own grandmother had trusted them to protect my future, and they'd turned it into their retirement plan. When I confronted my parents, they refused to open the door. Dad yelled through the window, "You're overreacting. We did what was best for everyone." Mom's voice was shrill. "Lena, family shares everything. You'll inherit it all anyway when we're gone." That's when I realized. They didn't even think it was wrong. I hired my own lawyer. The case was ugly. There were threats, manipulations, guilt trips. Mom called crying, begging me to drop it. "You're breaking this family apart, Lena. Money isn't everything." But it wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth. It was about how they looked me in the eye every day and pretended to love me while robbing me blind. The court battle lasted 9 months. Grandma testified. The judge called it an egregious breach of fiduciary duty. But money had already been spent. By the time the court ordered repayment, my parents were deep in debt. The business they'd started with my funds collapsed. They declared bankruptcy within weeks. Karma had started to do her work. My parents cut me off completely. My mom told the extended family I had betrayed them. My cousins stopped talking to me. Harper texted once, "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." No, Harper. I wasn't happy. I was exhausted. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing that all those family dinners, Christmas mornings, birthday gifts, were funded by my own inheritance. They were literally buying my affection with my money. One morning, I got a call from Grandma's assistant. "Mrs. Carter would like to meet with you. Privately." I went, expecting another painful lecture. Instead, Grandma hugged me. Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry, my dear. I trusted the wrong people. But that ends now." She told me she'd rewritten her will. Every remaining cent of her estate, properties, stocks, family holdings, would bypass my parents entirely. Everything would go directly to me. And she made one more move. She donated a portion of her wealth to a foundation for financial abuse victims. In my name. "People need to know," she said, "that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers." When my parents found out, all hell broke loose. Dad called, screaming. Mom showed up at my apartment in tears. "Lena, please. We're family. You can't let her do this." I opened the door just wide enough to look her in the eyes. "You did this to yourselves." And I shut the door. 3 months later, my parents' house went into foreclosure. Harper moved in with friends. Dad's company was investigated for tax fraud. And Grandma? She invited me over one afternoon for tea. She said, smiling, "Isn't it funny how life balances itself out?" I just nodded. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Because my revenge wasn't loud. It was quiet, peaceful, and absolute. Now, I live in a small house in Seattle. I manage what's left of the restored trust responsibly. I started a non-profit that teaches young women financial independence, especially those whose families controlled or exploited their money. Every time I tell my story, someone in the audience cries. Because they've lived it too. And I always end with the same words. Money can be earned back. But trust. Once broken, it never looks the same. A year later, Grandma passed away peacefully. Her lawyer handed me an envelope with a handwritten note. It said, "My dearest Lena, I wanted to give you more than money. I wanted to give you clarity. You saw through the lies and stood for what was right, even when it meant standing alone. That's worth more than any trust fund. Love always. Grandma Ruth." I cried for hours. Not because of the money, but because for the first time, someone in my family finally chose honesty over comfort. Sometimes, karma doesn't arrive with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it comes quietly, through a signature, a sealed envelope, a lawyer's letter. And when it does, the silence feels like justice. Thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe.